Rob, thanks for joining me. Maybe you want to have a couple of words about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for coming to chat. This is, I don't know, Summit number 14 or something like that.
I mean, it's. I had the first time after the one in San Jose, so I'm actually a pretty late joiner to the summits.
Yeah, I think it was 2009, and we had just. I moved my family over to the US, we had like a small room in a hotel, and the keynote was in the round. It was kind of small, intimate, but it was. It felt like the whole ecosystem grew up at that stage for the first time. It was right after the global financial crisis, and Atlassian did a $5 recession sale. So what happened was that with the financial crisis, Mike said, "Hey, why don't we do a $5 5-user version of Jira?" And
is that how the 10 users?
That's how the starter licenses got created.
Didn't know that.
It was the recession buster.
Yeah.
Like 5 users, $5, and it was like a bit of it had a little piggy bank, and as a promotion, and so Atlassian actually just stormed through the downturn because the software was so cheap and easy to use at that stage, right? Obviously a lot more expensive and a little bit more complex and detailed now, right? And off the back of that, we had Summit, and I guess the customers were fans, right? Back then. So that was the first Summit, yeah.
So
2009.
how did you get into Atlassian or in touch with Jira, Confluence in the first place?
So I was working in the US in the .com craze, and I was like 21 years old. I was flying around the US. I was a committer on a Java project called JBoss, on Enterprise Java. And there are a bunch of Enterprise Java servers out there, and there was one called Orion Server. And there was a little company in Australia providing support on Orion, and it was Atlassian. So they started off as a services support business. And I was doing training on WebLogic, JBoss in Silicon Valley. And then I went back to Australia when the market crashed, and I was teaching in Australia. And I needed a company to build, so I created a company. This was 2001. Mike and Scott had started in 2002, supporting Orion Server. And they needed a tracking system, so they built Jira. And I was doing Enterprise Java implementations, and we had assembled a stack on CVS. We were using Mantis, bug tracking, open source.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine put us in touch. We were on the same block in Sydney. And I was like, okay, let's switch out Mantis and put in Jira. When we started using it. And a few things happened around that time. One, Mike showed us this version 0.2 of Confluence.
Yeah.
And we were using Jive knowledge base. And we switched that out and put Confluence in and started using it. Right, version 0.2, we went live. We were like 6 people. Yeah. They were like 3.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one thing that happened. The second thing that happened was one of our customers was Johnson & Johnson. To make the Band-Aids and what have you. And we had a project to build a complex workflow. And by that stage, it's like 2004, Jira had an enterprise version, and the enterprise version was $2,000, and you got 2 extra things. Well, you got unlimited users for $2,000.
Dream today.
You got full source code, and you got a T-shirt. Right, and I have a photo of that T-shirt with my son. He's now 18, right? But, so I was like, hey, I need to build this workflow project for Johnson & Johnson. I'm like, Mike, can I buy Jira, grab the source code and like bastardize it and use it for my project? And he's like, I guess so. We need some kind of reseller agreement. Like, yeah, okay. So Ben Nafska, who was the original operations guy, and we built a partner agreement.
Yeah.
And you can see the mail thread back in 2004, like, okay, I think we need to do this and that. And we're like, okay, what's the resale margin, Mike? And Mike was like, I don't know, 35%. All right, let's do it. So we did it. And that was the first resell, was to a Fortune 10 company, right? Johnson & Johnson was the first ever resell of, but they didn't, it's kind of weird. They didn't really know because we took it and then we ripped it apart and used the source code to do something. And that therein began the partner program, like in 2004, the reseller program. So that's how we got into Atlassian. And
at that time, would you have remotely imagined what Atlassian is going to be like?
I had so many discussions back then because we were doing a lot of enterprise Java work, WebLogic, web methods, a lot of integration. And I was using Atlassian tools to run our business. And they even wrote a case study on us. But what would happen was that as the phones would ring at Atlassian, Scott specifically and Mike would say, hey, yeah, go and talk to Rob. He does that stuff, right? We're writing code, right? And so we just became a bit of a case study. We were doing Jira then for what's now Jira Work Management. Yeah. We were doing all that kind of stuff there, right? We ran all of our projects on it, all of our kind of finance requests and HR, like it grew up with the company. This is back 2005, 2006. And a couple of things happened then. The plugin area was really launched with Confluence. And David Peterson, who's a fellow friend of ours in Australia, created scaffolding and reporting and a whole bunch of other apps or plugins back then. There was no marketplace. There was a wiki. You would go to a wiki page and just install these things, right? And so Dave ended up working with us and we took over those plugins. And for 5 years, we supported them open source, free.
Yeah.
If I go down the plugin section, we supported them for 5 years free. And then we got to a point where it's like when Confluence 3 came out, there was so much changes, a lot of effort. And we said, we can't do this. We got to charge for this. So in 2011, 2012, we created a graduation sale. And I learned from Atlassian because they had birthday sales, right? It's kind of weird that, hey, Atlassian's 5th birthday and they put balloons on the website and sales went through the roof, right? It's like, we're selling software like it's cake, right? So I created a graduation sale because scaffolding and reporting and composition had so many users, and every time there was a new version and it didn't work, we got hammered with requests. And they were like aggressive, right? I need this, my system's dead, right? And our team was like, how do we do this? And so we created a graduation sale and we turned those apps into paid apps. Yeah. And so we had to build all the e-commerce. There was no marketplace. And we charged like $99 and $199 or whatever. We had like 3 price points and we said 40% off graduation sale. And my CFO at the time was like, you can't build a business on this kind of microtransaction stuff, right? Everyone was skeptical. Even my team was like, you can't charge for composition, it's tabs, right? And I'm like, well, hey, we're hurt. We need money, right? Like an entrepreneurial business, you got to pay the bill. So we put it up there and like within a day, sale. And we got complaints. And the only complaints we got from our community was, I'm open source, I'm education, I'm a free user, I can't afford to pay. And we said, great, write us a case study, we'll give you a free one. Right? So we started collecting all these case studies, right? So that was the only negativity. Everyone was actually happy to pay. And we went, the money started flowing. And I think that gave a lot of validation for what is now the marketplace, right? Yeah. To say there it is. So that was on the apps side.
But it must have been shortly before the marketplace really became into existence.
It didn't exist.
No, because I think I looked the first time at it in 2012-ish.
Yeah.
So it must have been about the same time then, similar time.
Yeah, and it took us a while to move our apps onto the marketplace because it was working and customers were paying us. I was like, hey, like we got stuff to do. And we had some weird price points. We just made 3 price points and said just pay us, right? So that was down the app side. On just as a company at Service Rocket, we've always been partnered really tightly, uniquely, very tightly with our platform vendors, and we bet on them very early. Like we bet on Atlassian when they were 6 people, right? And my own management team were like, "What are you doing? This is crazy." And I'm like, "No, there's something here, right?" So very early on, we were running. Atlassian used to do support with their engineering team, and it's a great concept to say our engineers do support because they're going to.
It's an expensive way to doing that.
It's expensive, but they get a feel for the customer.
Yeah.
But after time, it's too disruptive. There's no focus time, right? So we actually built a team in Malaysia and started doing the support for Atlassian. So for many years, if you emailed support at Atlassian.com, it was actually our company. We used to be called Customware.
Yeah.
We renamed to Service Rocket. That's another whole story. But it was us that was doing that work. And I always felt my commitment to Atlassian was we're going to build an ecosystem. So we've done so much work for them behind the scenes, whether it's building training, resell, support, apps. We built Confluence Questions as a product, but we don't market that stuff because we want to build an ecosystem. And what's really important with ecosystem is if an ecosystem is not growing, it's dying.
Yeah.
And the most dangerous thing is, someone getting an idea that they're going to win the ecosystem or they're going to dominate the ecosystem. And what I've loved to date, and I hope that we really keep, is that the mindset needs to be, we're going to grow the ecosystem, because if it's growing, everyone wins. An ecosystem with one player is not an ecosystem.
Yeah. No,
and everyone leaves, right?
So, and I was doing Cisco before doing the Atlassian stuff, and I think that's exactly where the ecosystem around Cisco became much, much tougher when Cisco actually stopped growing, and people had to start fighting for customers, money, etc. To survive. And that's where a lot of the collaboration went more towards competition in that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And totally agree with you. It's an amazing ecosystem that we have here, and pretty cool to be part of. But we need, in the long term, also to put our work in to keep it as collaborative and open as it is.
Absolutely, right. There's companies like yours. There's many other founding companies that are there. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of money that's coming to the space, and companies like AppFire have really kept the spirit of what's going on, very founder friendly, and understand what it takes. There's also a lot of private equity money in the space, and as an ecosystem, our commitment from Service Rocket's perspective is to really make sure that we fight to get through the wave of private equity and keep growing a vibrant ecosystem for the customers.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't do that, then if we take the customers for granted, there's no ecosystem.
Sure. How big is Service Rocket nowadays?
So we're close to 400 people, and we're in about 12 countries right now. So we expanded out of Australia. I live in the US. We've got North America, with Canada, Chile, El Salvador. We have a team in El Salvador, which I'm very proud of, with my father's family heritage. Come from there. Through Asia, we've got a very large team in Malaysia. We've now got the Philippines, some small presence in Indonesia and Singapore, and India, and then we have the UK and some other things that we're growing in Europe. But we were very early cloud adopters. Probably 5-6 years ago, we were already on cloud, and so infrastructure-wise, we're well prepared to support different countries and different cultures.
Cool. So ultimately going to this amazing 400 people company from starting with 3, how did you experience the journey? Because I often feel when we look back at all these, seems like a straight line and all nice vision and perfect execution, but going through that way,
I've almost killed the company 3 times. We've been on the doorsteps of death a couple of times, right? And it's real. Like we haven't taken any money, and we focus on our bet is if we help our Rocketeers learn and grow, that they have an impact on their career, their families, and their communities, and that impact will translate to a better customer experience and loyal customers, right? And it's worked that way, but we've made a lot of mistakes along the way. Many of us that came into this space weren't existing entrepreneurs or business people, or didn't have a lot of money. We started with $100, right? We borrowed no money to get to where we are, but yeah, we've had a lot of lumpiness, and right now I coach 3 or 4 other CEOs in this space, especially newer services companies that are coming up, because we feel, and we're seeing it, right? A lot of smart, business savvy consultants are saying, "Hey, I can build something," right? And so I'm coaching a few of those companies right now, because in a couple of years, they can contribute to the ecosystem. There's plenty of room for many more companies to come into the space. And it's not just the technical expertise that we need to support them with, it's the business expertise, right? And so we're putting a lot of effort into that on behalf of...
I don't even think it's just expertise, it's the experience as well.
Yeah.
Because some of the things you can't learn from books or things, and being able to share some of the errors we made, mistakes we made, can be very tremendously helpful, because at least for me, that's sometimes the situations I learned most out of. Not so much out of the successes, much more out of the
you can learn out of your failures. It's better if you can learn of someone else's failures, right? A little bit, right? It helps steer. And I've had a lot of mentors that have helped, and I have had a lot of mentors who said, "Hey, I told you so," right? And I'm like, okay, now I've learned what you told me. But the support network has been there, and it's been good. And I want to make sure we create that culture in our ecosystem, because when private equity is finished with their time frame and they need to sell whatever they've got, what are the customers left with? Right? What are the consultants in the world that have put their hard effort into growing skills? What are they left with? Right? And we want to make sure that what that is something we're all proud of and continues to add value to the world.
Absolutely. In terms of, are there any moments, situations you feel that stick out that you're particularly proud of or challenged you over those years?
When you come to teams, I still call it Summit in my head, right? And then you
and honestly, I still call it plugins more often than not.
It's just seeing folks, and a lot of us understand what we build, and we have a lot of care for each other, right? There's quite a lot of us CEOs that are, founders or very early CEOs of our companies. We're all in touch. It's less about trying to win deals over other people, and you can sense that with some of the newer folks that are in the ecosystem, because that's the way every other ecosystem works. Yeah, it's very cutthroat. Yeah. And so I just really love the fact that we're able to just have conversations, help each other out, and even on the personal side, right? So I think that's unique, because when you're working with your team and they say, "Oh, I'm in a competitive situation," you're like, "Yeah, it's okay. Just give it your best. It's okay, right?" Yeah. If they win, that's okay. A customer is buying a solution in this space versus a solution in another space. Great.
That's a win already.
That's number one. Yeah. We don't want them to leave the ecosystem. And then it's like, okay, what value are we providing? What more can we provide? And think about things differently and do that. So I think it's a very vibrant space. And there's always things that Scott and Mike do. Over there is the American Heart Association. You can learn CPR at conference, right? So kind of like, that's kind of good, because a lot of us stand around here all day
exactly
talking issues and wikis. Go and learn something that actually could be very helpful. So that kind of stuff is good.
Yeah. Anything that you'd say, I wouldn't do that again?
Wouldn't do that. I mean, there's lots. It's hard because
a lot of those things are character building, or
the
paving the road.
The journey helps you form Like we talk with a lot of companies now that we get approached, being in Silicon Valley, we get approached by the who's who of upstarts who literally call me up on the phone and say, hey, we heard that you build ecosystems. You've done it for, several companies. Come and do it for us. And I'm like, great. And it's kind of nice to share. What I share with them is a number of them look at the Atlassian space and they say, great, I'm going to copy and paste this and build it for my company. And I advise them and say, well, don't do that. What you want to do is you want to copy the journey, not copy the result.
Exactly.
So really getting down to, from like a product perspective, right? Who is the customer? Who are the stakeholders that you're trying to nurture?
Yeah.
And when you build an ecosystem, you're building that. You're not building a gold, silver, platinum plan.
No, that
with
is
sales
just
targets.
A means to an end.
Correct, right? So it's kind of exciting. I think there's so many opportunities in different technologies, and now it's all AI, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't need me anymore. They just do AI, or
Oh, I think we'll still have a job for a long while, but nevertheless, I do think that AI is going to tremendously change the world.
Yeah.
Similar to how the internet has changed how we experience the world, AI will do something similar. Yeah, that is a conference. And that's Samal.
Someone's celebrating at the booth next door.
Yeah.
I think he won a game of chess or something, some kind of puzzle.
No, I think he won our raffle, which is a DeLorean ride.
Oh, there we go.
Is there any other questions I should have asked?
I don't know. It's been a fun journey to like remember stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And I think very thankful for your company's contributions to the ecosystem. Right. It's great.
So don't make me blush now. So
no, it's like you have kids, right? We're just chatting before we hit record, right? And it's important to understand that we're not here just to like sell stuff. There's real humans that we're supporting. And I think we have a good opportunity to set an example that, the world of software and everything doesn't need to be,
I think it's way more than that. And I mean, I think we are in this ecosystem, the ones of us who've been here long, we are all lucky that we made our money along the way. And but it's not all about money. It's a lot more about the connections here, the fun you have, and it's the people we work with. Yeah,
absolutely.
And I also, it's nice to see smaller vendors coming up, and when we can help them, sometimes by an investment or sometimes by just coaching them or sharing things. It's the impact we make to their journey, and then see them go on, be successful. I find it actually way more rewarding than 10 more sales, 5 more licenses, or anything like that.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there are some folks that just focus on license resell, and it's like, okay, that's great. But over time, it's the relationship that's more valuable than the transaction.
Yeah.
Right. And, customers work that out over time.
Yeah. And the ones who don't, maybe I actually don't want them as a customer.
Yeah. Or you just want the transaction. It's okay. Just buy it here if you want it. Right. So it's good to have that variety.
Yeah. Well, it was a very great conversation. Good memories.
Thanks for stopping by.
I learned quite a few things as well. That's pretty cool. Didn't know about how the licenses came about, etc. So the early part of the journey that I missed.
There was some things happening in parallel. There was a partner in Japan doing stuff, and very early on, Adaptivists started getting involved in the wiki side of things, and it was kind of interesting as we all met each other. We all realized that most of us hadn't run a business before, right?
Yeah.
And I think we also quickly realized that, okay, there's more value in growing something than killing each other.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
We're good. All right. Thank you, man.
It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.